Welcome back and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. Is now the greatest time in the world to be cold calling? No, not the way you're used to getting cold calls. If I even said the word cold call to most people, then it would simply elicit reactions anywhere from the hives to pictures of demons to four-letter words and hanging up on bad phone calls quickly. But bad actors aside, when you inject a little empathy, take a little time to offer and serve, instead of selling to people who are busy and don't want to be bothered, it can be a really powerful tool for generating revenue and creating disruption when other avenues in marketing or advertising may not always be working so well, especially due to a pandemic. Paul M. Neuberger is a keynote speaker, entrepreneur, sales trainer, and author of The Secrets to Cold Call Success. Close more business in less time than ever before. And on this episode, we'll discuss calling, sales scripts, attention triggers, bad pitches on LinkedIn, voicemail response rates, living in Milwaukee, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the brilliant Martin Lindstrom, movie trailers, Methuselah, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a cold calling sales expert with a shark who will always be closing, or swimming at least, on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your background and story and your career today.
Yeah, appreciate it, Shark. Wonderful to join you here, my friend. You know you've made it in life when you're on Shark Kinney's podcast. So this is
you're
a big
right.
moment for me today.
You've set the bar low. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a background about me. I love making the impossible possible. It's one of those things that I jump out of bed for. I don't get out of bed to do the easy. I don't get out of bed to do the tried and true. I love doing things that are hard, that are challenging, because if it ain't hard, you're not growing. If it's not hard, you're not going outside of your comfort zone. And I think it's because of that initially after I graduated from college, I was drawn to professional fundraising. Talk about hard. Trying to get alumni, parents, and friends to donate money to organizations, scholarship fund, endowment fund, whatever. But I found a calling in life. I loved it. Following the sudden passing of my father-in-law, I saw what happens when you don't necessarily answer those what-if questions in life. And because my mother-in-law's financial life was a little bit more difficult than it had to be as a result, I jumped ship and I became a certified financial advisor. Now, I'm working in a sales capacity that is 100% commission. Again, something that's hard. But I've always been drawn to cold calling, Shark. It's hard. It's something that everybody tells you is dead. And that's the thing. If you ever want to get me going, just tell me it can't be done. Tell me I shouldn't do it. And I'm going to make a beeline right for that thing. So knowing that I needed a cold call now for my very survival, I went outside the box. I tried new approaches, new strategies, new best practices, new hooks. And over a several month period of time, I'd make 15 calls, schedule 15 appointments. I got an awful lot of attention. And people started to say, I'll pay you if you can train me. I'll pay you to write a script. Sensing a business opportunity, I created the Cold Call Coach in April of 2015, went full-time to meet demand in October of 2015. Now we got clients in all 50 states and we're in 127 countries. It's a real blessing.
So your new book, The Secrets to Cold Call Success, Close More Business in Less Time Than Ever Before. Really good read, really enjoyed it. And so we got a lot of questions I want to dive in. First of all, though, I want to ask you, how do you compare cold calling as an effective strategy compared to other forms of sales or marketing triggers that somebody in management may want to enact or pull? Because it's not necessarily the most beloved profession from folks that don't like cold calling, and we get so many calls today. It's obviously changed.
I would say it's the greatest modality with respect to sales, maybe outside of LinkedIn to some degree. I mean, let's say you're asking me to pick between my children, Shark. Come on, take it easy on me. But I think LinkedIn is the greatest monetization tool in the business community today. But in terms of the ability to sell quickly, to sell big, to retain business for a certain period of time, I think cold calling is easily number one. And the reason I say that very quickly is because cold calling checks all the boxes that I think one needs to check to be an effective salesperson. Number one, people buy people first, not companies. It's hard to sell yourself as a person via direct mail. It's hard to sell yourself as a person via email. One of the best ways to do it is to have a more personal conversation with somebody. Very few people are going to say, sure, total stranger, I'll join you for an hour and a half lunch. But at least with the cold call, it gives you a 30-second, 45-second, 90-second conversation, and that can go a long way. Number two, people are emotional buyers, not logical buyers. They won't always remember what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel when you said it. You can give quite an experience on a cold call, even if it's for a little bit of time versus some of these other modalities. And if you can hit somebody at a deep emotive level, they're more likely to want to take this relationship to the next step. And the last thing I'd say, Shark, is it's also important to differentiate yourself. What is one thing I get with you as a person that I can't find anywhere else? What is one thing I get with your organization that I can't find with any other organization on planet Earth? It's a lot easier to differentiate yourself personally or professionally via the spoken word rather than the written word, which is another reason why cold calling works so well.
Yeah, we're going to dive into all of those, including a lot in LinkedIn here in a little bit. But when do you find it's not right for a salesperson or a company? It works really well, and I've done it before with some success and some failures, like anybody that's done it. But it's not always the perfect fit for people. And so how do you define whether it's the person or a company when it's not a good idea to approach?
I'm gonna respectfully push back on you there, my friend. And
Oh yeah. Well, that one I kind of set up on the tee because it's kind of the impossible question. It works for everybody if you do it right, is what you're
kind of what
going to tell me
it's
more
like we've
eloquently.
been doing this for a long time. That was the alley, and here comes the oop. It's not the tool, it's the user of the tool. And again, I don't want to give away all my secrets. I mean, again, people listen to your podcast because you're a smart guy and you got great guests. So I certainly want to deliver, but I don't want to give away all my secret sauce. But the one thing I will tell you is the reason people don't like cold calling is cold calling done the way it's always been done, what I like to call the stupid way, should be relegated to the dustbin of history. I mean, just think about how unnatural the old cold call methodology is. Hey, total stranger whom I've never met, I'm going to ask you a bunch of very personal questions. Stay on the phone with me for 9 minutes, please. And then I'm going to try to ram this down your throat. I mean, under no circumstance ever would that ever be permissible. That's why it feels bad, because that goes against human nature. We need to get to know somebody first. We need to earn their trust first. We need to earn their respect and admiration first. Then we can sell. The old stupid way of cold calling says, no, forget everything you thought you knew and do it this way. That's why we hate it. So if people follow my methodology, the answer is simple. There's never a bad time to cold call, because the ultimate secret to cold call success, Shark, and you know this because you've absorbed the contents of my book, it's we don't cold call to sell anything. We cold call to give everything. And that's why in the middle of this global pandemic, when you've got millions of people on unemployment, when regrettably you've got small businesses shutting down left and right, I've got clients that have 60, 70, 80% cold call success rates, because now more than at any other time in our nation's history, people need to be given stuff. They need to be shown sympathy, empathy, a kind word or two. And that's what my cold call structure is all about.
Speaking of alley-oops, this is only timely. Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of his name. Antetokounmpo, is he worth $228 million?
Oh yeah,
he is to the city, and it's just a good guy.
And you hit both for those reasons alone. One, I mean, Milwaukee's a decent sized economy, but compared to Chicago, New York, Atlanta, we don't compare. He is such an engine for our local economy, not only for the Milwaukee Bucks, but for the organizations that he's a spokesperson of, the jersey sales, whatever else. I mean, yeah, he really powers the Milwaukee economic engine. But it's hard to find an athlete like this kid. He's a hard worker. He's polite. He's
smart.
Oh my gosh, he's respectful. He could have gone to 15 other organizations to try to get a ring. But what did I say? People like me attracted to things that are hard. That's Giannis. He started here. He wants to bring a ring here. He knows it's going to be a bit of a lift, but it's going to fill him with immense satisfaction to make it happen. And that's what us Milwaukee folks are all about.
He's an amazing contribution to the city. So, there are a lot of people, young to old, cradle to grave, that in today's world avoid the phone unless it's in a text or social media form. I think it freaks people out half the time when I call them, because they feel like they need to be engaged in a different way. But I'm curious, so many marketers, especially today, hate the we call it air quote, practice of advertising and sales and that interrupting. But obviously, like you said, we're seeing a lot of success with it today because people are at home. But are we at an inflection point with people as they are evolving where no one wants to be bothered by salespeople and everyone just wants to search and find content on their own? That's a loaded question again, I know, to a person that's a professional salesperson, but nonetheless, people do think a lot more of the searching for content than necessarily the interruption with advertising and sales, which again, I'm an advertising and sales guy. So it's also loaded for me, and I've worked in sales, but some of the way people have just evolved, whether it's generational or practice with how the mobile phone is part of their lives, has really changed. I've found the way how people want to interact, and so I'd love your viewpoint on that.
Yeah, and it's an excellent question. I should expect nothing less from you, Shark. But it kind of harkens back to the answer that I just gave. I don't want to sound like a broken record. I would agree with everything you said. There's nothing structurally or fundamentally wrong in anything that you just said there. And I would technically agree with that. However, I just go back to two things. A, people don't know what they don't know. And you're a smart guy, I'm a smart guy, but there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. Having somebody now offer a way to assist us, to bring value, to enrich our lives, to make our lives easier, to make our lives more effective. Gosh, I never even thought of that until you brought it up. There is no way that any human being is going to know everything about everything. There's always going to be a need to introduce an individual or an organization to a new concept. Always will be. However, one of my central theses when it comes to cold calling, which is why I think it's made me successful and my clients so successful, is we are salespeople trying to sell something, but on the cold call, you don't want to sound like a salesperson trying to sell something. That's the rub. That's the conundrum. And that's why, like, what I'm saying is based on who you're trying to get in front of. And that's what I should say for your listeners here is the ultimate definition of cold call success. Earlier I said I got clients that have 60% cold call success rate. Okay, well, what does that mean, Neuberger? Does that just mean they didn't drop a 4-letter word and curse out your mother? No, of course not. That's not what it means. What we define a successful cold call is based on what you say and how you say it. Were you able to secure dedicated time? And dedicated time can take three forms: A, an in-person meeting; B, a scheduled phone call; and C, a virtual session, among maybe some other things. As long as you're able to secure dedicated time, that's a success. Well, you don't necessarily have to try to sell something to get dedicated time. What if this bizarre concept, before I get, I give? So what if I'm calling somebody and offering something of profound value? Well, I'll stop by and drop it off. Or why don't we have a 30-minute conversation to see if it's a fit? Or why don't we schedule a phone call, get to know each other better, and if we see synergies, then we can proceed. I'm very, very good at getting dedicated time for my clients. And I think if people keep it simple, stupid, and just say, I don't got to qualify them, I don't got to sell anything, I don't have to do any kind of pressure sale, just get the dedicated time, just have a conversation. And then that's when the magic happens, because people buy people, and it's really quite that simple.
So early on in the book, in chapter 2, you write about the ideal client. How much of the success of cold calling do you find is ultimately due to calling the right client or the ideal client?
A lot of it. The war on cold calling is literally won or lost before you ever pick up the phone. And that's why most traditional cold callers stink so much. It's probably not their fault. It's the organization's fault. Here's your script. Yeah, but boss, nope, here's your script. Here's your list. Yeah, but boss, nope, here's your list. I mean, there's no strategy there. That's the dial for dollars paradigm, and that's going the way of the dodo bird. I mean, cold calling is not quantity over quality. I mean, just think of that concept, Shark. Quantity over quality. I mean, when's the last time you went out to watch a low quality movie, at least intentionally? When's the last time you went out with your spouse to enjoy a low quality meal? Nobody likes low quality. Why is cold calling different? Make 200 calls and go home. You're rewarding the quantity and not the quality. Yeah, I made 200 calls. I basically swore at the guy and hung up the phone. Well, you made your calls. Good job, son. Have a good night. It's all about quality. So for us, in order to make it a quality call versus a quantity call, You just got to figure out who's the ideal person, who's the ideal organization, what traits make them ideal in terms of who needs you, when they need you, and what they need you for. And then once we put some time in up front, figuring out what that profile looks like, now we can customize a script. Now we can customize an approach. Now we can customize a value offering because we're being more strategic rather than just dialing through the phone book.
Yeah. And I will tell you, though, that when I managed a lot of people who were smiling and dialing like me, I gave them a script and probably, too much micromanaged it. I'd be the first to admit that. But, there is a struggle, I think, that a lot of managers have when they have people that are so green that don't really know how to learn to adapt on their own. And so you get forced into giving them a script you want them to follow because you don't want them to not say the wrong thing, just not sound like a complete, buffoon. And I think that's unfortunately what happens with a lot of people. Then you figure out this person shouldn't have been in sales in the first place. So it's not necessarily, uh, the script or whether or not you have one always, but just force feeding it on people who will never learn to improve it on their own is obviously a problem. But anyway, chapter 3, you talk about people buying people, which I love. Again, not companies. How much is it of this is determined by what they need versus what people and brands want to sell? Because this again goes back to sort of a not necessarily an evolutionary shift in a lot of our marketing and our messaging and our sales, but a lot of what people don't want is to be pushed, but obviously you've got to push if you're pushing a product or service right now to make a sale. For the most part, not everything's being found with this amazing blog you've written somewhere that a lot of content folks want to think is the only way.
Yeah, well, and again, I think part of it is, I'm not a huge fan of research up front when it comes to cold calling. I know I just got done talking about ideal clients. I know I just got done talking about, well, how do we define what that is? For me, that's not a lot of research, however. So for instance, if I'm in the B2B business, I could say, well, I want to call an organization that has 50 employees. For me, that's that's the sweet spot. Or I want to cold call an organization that is privately owned, or I want to cold call an organization that has multiple locations. For whatever reason, that puts me in an optimal position to be successful. That's what I mean by research. But if I
So you're doing more of the research on the company, not necessarily the person.
Correct, exactly. I'm gonna get to know a little bit more about this person. Maybe a quick Google search, maybe some quick LinkedIn looking around, or whatever the case may be. But the problem is you're never really going to know a whole lot about this person. People are typically pretty private unless this is somebody who's all over the place. So I don't normally try to sell to the person or bring value to that person per se. I usually try to appeal to their title, at least initially. So if I'm cold calling a CFO of an organization, the guy's name is Bob Smith. He's on LinkedIn, but he's got 7 contacts. He hasn't updated his profile since Methuselah was around. And I'm thinking, there's nothing here I can learn. He's a new CFO. I Google him. He's an under the radar kind of guy. I don't know anything about Bob Smith. But now my question in my brain starts to go like this. Well, okay, I don't know a lot about Bob personally, but I've got an idea of what a CFO is accountable for. I've got an idea of what taps into the self-interest and self-preservation of a CFO. Remember, I'm not selling. So what can I offer of value that a CFO would generally like? What could I offer of value that would get a CFO to go, that sounds pretty good? And then when we get the dedicated time, that's when I learned about this person as an individual. And based on that intelligence, now I know who they are, what makes them tick, some of their interests. We've built rapport. And based on that data gathering, now I can sell to a need because I know the need. But if I didn't get dedicated time, I'd be on the outside looking in.
Yeah. Thanks for the Methuselah reference, by the way. Most of the time I want to tell that same joke. They never get it. And so I just tell them it was Greek to me the first time I heard it as well. So
well said.
Yeah. So chapter 4, you talk about differentiating yourself and, sort of being that niche salesperson that someone remembers. How do we go about doing that? Because so much of cold calling is your personality, their personality, and how that gels, but really giving them something to remember other than being one of 1,000 other sales pitches they're getting daily.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I've got I've got a 90-minute keynote just on this topic. It's my most popular keynote. And up until COVID struck, I was traveling the world giving it. Instantaneous differentiation, how to make yourself memorable. This is important, not just in sales. It's important, I would say, in every aspect of life. It's important if you're trying to market your company, brand your organization. It's important if you're at a job interview looking for the next big thing. Differentiation, the opposite of differentiation is what? Assimilation. Under no circumstance in the world of sales, marketing, branding, job interviews is assimilation a good thing. We need to go the opposite way, from many, one. And the cold call gives us the optimal platform to start doing that. Short answer, because I love the sound of my own voice and I'll talk all day if you let me, but the short answer with respect to differentiation and making yourself memorable is one word: why. Simon Sinek got this popularized several years ago. It changed the way that I sell. I give him credit for coming up with the importance of the why. I'll take all the credit in the world for adopting it in the cold call scripts and methodology like we do. But the why is powerful for three reasons. This checks all the boxes. One, the why is uniquely yours. Hence differentiation. You're the only one that has your why. Why do you do what you do? You don't have to answer that now, but you're the only one that has that exact answer. There's differentiation. Two, your why, because it tells a story, usually starts to hit people at a more emotive level. As I started, when you asked about my background, when I was with Thrivent, my why involved the untimely passing of my father-in-law. And I would get into more detail and talk about what that did to my family and talk about some of the emotional repercussions. But that starts to hit people at a deep emotive level. So that checks the emotional box. But the last box that it checks is being memorable. Why? Because when you tell a story, people feel like they were there. They see what you see. They feel what you feel. They experience what you experienced. And I've got a whole training just on telling a why, but one of the most important aspects of telling a good why, in addition to making it a story, is being generous with details and specifics. Dates, times, locations. What was that person wearing? What did you exactly see? Describe it in vivid detail. And that starts hitting somebody at a deeper, more visceral part of the brain. If you start connecting with them in the deep brain, that's where deep memories are stored. And if you can make yourself memorable by telling a why, all the better. So just by introducing your why on the cold call, you've differentiated yourself because it's uniquely yours. You're telling an emotional story, hello, emotional selling, and you make yourself memorable based on the details you share.
So later on, you talk about scripts, and I'd like you to kind of elaborate on what an attention trigger is and how we should be considering and creating these.
Oh, man. I should have known you're going to ask these types of questions. You're making me sweat over here. How do I get all this information in a limited amount of time? The attention trigger. So spoiler alert, our scripts are comprised of 5 parts in a certain order. And part 2 is called the attention trigger. So after you greet the prospect, you go right into the attention trigger. The attention trigger is designed to be a fail-safe in case the assumptive greeting, which is part 1, doesn't work. Basically, if you use a bowling analogy, before you knock the pins down, what do you first have to do to the pins? You got to set them up. Well, if you don't have the prospects set up, which means if you haven't elevated their mood, if they're not hanging on your every word, if you don't have their sole undivided attention, if you haven't at least piqued their curiosity where they say, I wonder what this person's going to talk about, what comes next, which is the value offering, is going to go right over their head. And if you miss on the value offering, your odds of getting dedicated time really go in the toilet. So the attention trigger is designed to ensure, hey, no matter what happens next, I'm going to make sure that I trigger your attention. It's just a 1-sentence portion of the script that should be customized for that person of interest, like we were just talking about. I don't know who Bob Smith is. I don't know anything about him personally, but again, I got an idea of what a CFO is accountable for. I got an idea of what a CFO wants to hear. So a good attention trigger, last thing I'll say, I could keep going, but I think this will end the point. A good attention trigger really to figure out, well, what should I say? You should ask yourself 2 questions. The first question that you should ask is, what is this person of interest accountable for? And the first tip of a good attention trigger is whatever you say in that 1 sentence should tap into their accountability. Because if they're accountable for it, they want to make sure that whatever it is successful, comes to fruition. Hey, this is supposed to be something that comes my way. But the second question you should ask yourself is, Who does this POI want to get an unsolicited call from? So let's say a CFO, let's just say a CFO is accountable for financial matters. And let's just say they want to get a call from the Wall Street Journal. Let's just say. So a good attention trigger should do this. It should A, tap into what that person is accountable for, while B, sounding like it might be from the person they want to get an unsolicited call from. Now, we're not saying, hey, Shark, Paul Neuberger at the Wall Street Journal. That'd be a lie. But if I just so happen to phrase that sentence in a way that a reporter from the Wall Street Journal might, and then I explain exactly what I mean about that in the next sentence, that's called giving myself a competitive advantage. That triggers their attention. Now I've got them set up. Here comes the VAP. I bowl them over, and hopefully I get the appointment shortly thereafter.
So I think the psychology, it's fair to say, of how we receive these triggers as well has changed, partly because of what COVID's done to the world. And I'm curious how you see prospecting, how that may or may not change with sales and cold calling and prospecting for the, I'm going to call it mid to longer term. What do you recommend for salespeople, especially to stay ahead of this? Because some of that's creating triggers for people at all levels, as you said, just whether or not it's the CFO. Everybody's taking a new twist and look at their own jobs, how their company performs. It's not just that they're physically in a building or physically not, but there has been a little bit of a shift in priorities that I think will continue for the near to whatever term you want to think of. But I'm curious how you see, sales, prospecting, cold calling, and all those triggers changing because of COVID.
One word. I know you like this word because we've talked about it. One word: empathy. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I see on a very regular basis right now. So I fully believe that right now is the greatest time in the history of the world to be cold calling. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, people look at me when I say that as if I've got lobsters crawling out of my ears. Well, let me tell you why. So if you look at all salespeople as a pie, so 100% of the pie, all salespeople are right here. I'd say about 65% of them are not cold calling right now, because they're saying, well, geez, with all the stuff that's going on, this business is struggling to survive. This business owner right now is worried about his livelihood. I look horribly insensitive if I call right now. I'm not even going to do it. So 65% of the population is gone. I would say roughly the other 30% that is still left of that 35, that 30%, they're just cold calling the stupid way because it's all they know. It's all they've been taught. They're not very imaginative. They don't think well on their feet. They're getting slaughtered out there because they're come across as tone deaf and insensitive. The people that are surviving is that 5%. They're still doing it, but they're doing it in a better way. And that better way is, I believe, my way, which is to lead with empathy. Now, rather than me going up against 100% of the population, I'm just going up against 5, and we're having the time of our lives because we're all being successful. I hope this teaches salespeople to put themselves in the shoes of the other person with whom they're cold calling. You don't know what that person's going through. You don't know what's going on in their personal life. You don't know if business is good or bad. You don't know if they're struggling with something. You don't know if they're hanging on by their very fingernails. You don't know if their hopes and dreams are about to be dashed. Stop being this arrogant guy or gal who's trying to ram something down their throat. Stop talking down to prospects as if they should be blessed that you called them. Stop acting like you're their white knight that's going to solve all their problems. Who the heck do you think you are to start to say that stuff in the first place? What I think this is teaching us in the world of sales is, hey, before I pick up the phone, I better understand something. This guy's worried right now. This guy's struggling right now. This guy might not want a sales call right now. I still need to survive too. So I'm going to do it. But how do I do it in a way that shows empathy, in a way that can relate, in a way that's not too pushy? That's not just a good skill for the COVID pandemic. I pray, Shark, that we heed these lessons, we learn these lessons, and when the world gets back to as normal as it's ever going to be, we continue that approach, because not only are we going to be more successful, that's just a gentler, kindler way to sell, and we're all going to benefit.
Earlier on, we talked about LinkedIn, and we're all getting swamped with a lot of badly scripted, fakely, if I can use that made up word, but fakely personalized messages for those that automate a lot of their sales pitches, especially on LinkedIn. I mean, it's absolutely poisoning LinkedIn to me right now, but you're seeing these, right? You're seeing these same ones. You see, You see salespeople selling to salespeople nonstop. What do you think they need to be doing differently in order to get to that call with people? Because it's really, it's one of a few things. It's one where somebody from the front end asking for the call. Two, they don't ask for the call. They say they want to connect, and 3 seconds after you've accepted that request, they want to call, or it's something else that's just really bad. But there's very rarely anything good. Half the time when I send a request to anybody, I put in bold letters, "I'm not looking to sell you anything." And I get a perfect response rate almost, because I've never followed up, with hey, I want 15 minutes of your time. And so it's just bad sales practice for a lot of people. And I babble a little bit, but I'm sure you've seen the same thing. And I'd love to hear what your advice is to all those bad sales folks.
Well, Shark Kitty babbling is still most people being very eloquent. So
you're funny.
Don't you worry about that.
I graduated from the 13th grade. These are not all gems.
That extra year paid dividends for you, at least.
Exactly.
That's good.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's just use an example here. If I spend no time with my children, no time at all, I'm not involved in their lives, would I expect to win Father of the Year? If I want a really great body, but I never go to the gym, am I going to have the look that I aspire to? If I want to be an NBA basketball player, but I never practice a day in my life, am I going to realize that dream, that goal? And the answer is, of course not. What do you need with all of those three examples? You need an investment of time, energy, and effort. And I think it's biblical. You're going to reap what you sow. If you sow laziness, if you sow mass distribution, if you sow copy and paste, what do you think you're going to get in return? People are not stupid. They're inundated with this. I can tell a copy and paste job from one that's not. And one of the ways that it's very easy for me is I don't go by Paul Neuberger. I go by Paul M. Neuberger. My middle initial is Michael. It's a tribute to my father, who's my superhero in this life. And so on LinkedIn, my first name is listed as Paul M. It's easy to see when it's copy and pasted. Good morning, Paul M. Who would say that? If this was a customized, personalized message, who the heck would call me Paul M? Nobody. There's laziness, slothfulness, etc. I have no sympathy for those people. You are always going to be at the bottom of the barrel if you do that. You are never going to have the level of sales success if you do that. One of the things that I do, it's not easy, but anything in life worthwhile should be somewhat difficult. You're going to get out what you put in. What I'll do is I'm not going to sit there and do a customized 3-paragraph message for everybody, but maybe I'll have a template that's fairly similar, a template that I can copy and paste. If it's good morning, I'll say good morning. If I'm sending it to Shark, I'll call him Shark. Maybe I'll reference his organization once or twice, but I take the time to personalize my messages. I take the time to do them one at a time to make sure it's specific for this person. And guess what? I have a very good response rate, and I sell a lot on LinkedIn because I'm putting in the effort. The other thing, because you brought this up, and then I'll kick it back to you, is I agree and disagree with that 15-minute sales turnaround. I disagree because you shouldn't be selling that quickly. I just got done talking about that with respect to cold calling. I agree, however, that you should connect with somebody or turn around roughly 15 to 20 minutes after.
Yeah.
You should connect roughly 15 to 20 minutes after you connect. And the reason that I say that is because what if Shark and I just connect, but instead of 20 minutes after the fact I'm selling him, what if 20 minutes after the fact I'm giving him something? If I'm an author, here's a free chapter of my book. If I have a business television show, here's a free subscription. If I've got an online course, hey, here's a coupon code for 2 free hours of my course. Imagine what that would do. So that's one of the practices that I do. That's been a good effort, a good step in the right direction for my business. And if people go, man, he's paying attention and he's giving me something, this relationship is going to pay dividends.
Oh, agreed. And I said, connect is the optimal word. I mean, that's just the problem, that people are not even leveraging social to connect. It's just a sales platform that doesn't offer a lot of people anything of value anymore. And that's what's frustrating about it. So how much should someone invest in cold calling before they know it's the right strategy for them, or let alone career. When you're looking at people that are doing this, a lot of people obviously start out, especially with LinkedIn, but you've got to be giving a lot of these folks advice as well as to how well to adjust their strategy to continue down a certain path, or get out of the profession if it's not working. Obviously, if they're not selling and they're doing the right things, they need to jump out. But still, there's a look in the mirror that a lot of people don't often have.
And I would agree. That's well said. I would kind of compare it to an individual who maybe is going to run a marathon, or maybe somebody who has been out of shape for a couple of years. They want to start going back into the gym and they want to start becoming the best possible version of themselves, or maybe even somebody that wants to start a new diet. I think one of the best pieces of advice for somebody who's about to do a major life change like that is to seek a physician's assistance first. So you're talking to your doctor. Your doctor says, well, this is where you are now. This is how much you can push yourself. This is the kind of exercise program I think you should be on. Based on your blood type or whatever else, these are the kind of foods you should be eating. Don't start a radical diet without consulting your doctor first. Don't start killing yourself in the gym without consulting your doctor first. You need expert advice on how far you can go. You need expert advice on, I want to get healthier. Well, gosh, that can mean 10,000 different things. What's the best way for me to get healthy? Rather than starting the diet, starting the workout program, doing more harm than good, because I didn't eat the right stuff. I thought I did. I pushed myself too hard in the gym. Now I'm hurt. Get assistance first. Take a breath, take a small step back, get an expert's opinion. Now you take 2 steps forward. The same is true with cold calling. Before you begin a cold call strategy, before you begin a cold call plan, seek a professional's assistance. Obviously, I'm biased. I think you would do very well to call me, but I'm not the only person out there. There's other sales trainers or leadership coaches. If you're going to do this right. And the reason I say that is, A, you're more likely to be successful because you have a professional's opinion, an expert's opinion. But also, B, we tend to be very hard on ourselves. We tend to be impatient. We tend to give up fairly quickly as a society. A coach is not going to let you do that. A coach can figure out pretty quickly, yeah, Shark, I love you. This was a fun 2-week assessment. You don't have what it takes. Why don't we do LinkedIn instead? Okay, good. He gave me his expert opinion. But if I say, no, Shark, let's do this, you start going, you have a rough week. This was stupid. I'm going to quit. No, you're not going to quit. You got this, man. We're going to modify the script. We're going to stay on top of this. You're doing great, brother. You're making incremental progress. Really? You think so? Okay, I'll keep going. So it's impossible for me to say, but I'll say that most people start off incorrectly. They start off on the wrong foot because they didn't get a professional coach. And most people give up too quickly, again, because they don't have a professional coach. So seeking that out first and making that be your first step is going to optimize your chances for success.
One of the chapters I really enjoyed, though, is how to look at voicemails. And I love your point of view on this. Callback numbers are abysmal for anybody, any profession. But I believe that if you cited it was around 1%, but there's a thin line between calling someone too much and being a professional stalker who's just annoyed themselves out of a sale. So what kind of advice do you give on how to approach voicemails a lot better?
No, good question. Yeah. And because you reference statistics, again, I can talk a good game. I'm a professional.
Well, I read the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm a professional speaker, just like you, Shark. I mean, guys like us get paid to speak well, but numbers don't lie. And as Shark referenced, he's correct. The national voicemail response rate is approximately 0.7%. Even then, so you get 1 call returned after 110 or so voicemails. Even then, it's a wrong number. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to call you. It's like, okay, my clients have an average voicemail response rate of 23.1%. I mean, that's almost 30 times the national average. That is not a rounding error, needless to say. And the reason that is I could probably go really deep on this, but I'll keep it superficial. It's like if you're watching football and you're going down to Vegas to bet on the Super Bowl. On one conference, you have the world's greatest offense. On another conference, you have the world's greatest defense. And I say, okay, Shark, you're going to bet $1,000. That's all the information I give you, or whoever's listening to this. Well, who are you going to bet on? The greatest defense or the greatest offense? And the majority of people are going to say the greatest defense, because it's conventional wisdom and it's true that a good defense beats a good offense. The reason we are so successful at cold calling in general, but voicemail specifically, is we are defensive voicemail levers. All that means is an offensive voicemail is what you say. A defensive voicemail is what you don't say. An offensive voicemail is what you put in. A defensive voicemail is what you take out. We say next to nothing. It also borrows from the theme of a movie trailer. Nobody's going to go see a movie if the movie trailer shows every scene in the movie, if it shows the ending of the movie, and it tells you everything about everything. Nobody's going to go back to see it. Yeah, that movie sucks. I don't like the ending. No thanks. The best movie trailers only show you a little bit. They pique a lot of curiosity, and they basically say, hey, there's something exciting in this for you. If you want to see it, though, you got to come to the movie and buy the popcorn and the jujubes. That's how our voicemails work. We say next to nothing, but the limited amount of stuff we do say taps into their self-interest, their self-preservation, think attention trigger. And by the time the voicemail is done, I got the prospect really thinking two things. A, this could be anybody. I know it's Shark Kinney. You got to identify yourself. I know it's Shark Kinney, but who's Shark Kinney? What's the context here? I don't know. But based on what Shark Kinney said in the limited voicemail that he gave, I can't afford not to call this back because it's tapping into what I'm accountable for. I'm going to call back, see what happens. Well, once they call back to see what happens, we got them, and that's why we have so much success.
So as I read the last chapter of the book with really sort of keeping your head in the game, as I finished reading it, you talk about keeping your head in the game, and I really gravitated towards this thought and question. Are you finding a lot of people who are good at cold calling are just really bad at going a lot further down the funnel and completing a sale? Because so much of it is the prospecting, but then really the closing, grabbing them sort of mid funnel. A successful salesperson often, I find, good all the way through. But there are a lot of disparate teams now where a lot of companies have somebody set up a really good cold calling strategy to start, hand it off to somebody else, and it falls off a cliff. It happens all the time. How do you sort of look at really helping? This is probably rephrase the question. How are you helping sort of sales people and teams keep all of that together so that they can keep focused on not only getting that initial cold call, but also finishing and completing a sale?
Yeah. And again, I just think it goes back to relationships, people by people. And I do work with several organizations where they have a group of individuals that make the call, and then they have this group of individuals that runs the appointment. And following my methodology, they do still have success. So that is feasible, it's doable. And again, I've worked with organizations that are doing quite well with that. But if I'm running a company or I'm the VP of sales or whatever the case may be, and I've got my choice in terms of how I'm going to build an organization, I want this one person to carry that through. Because like I said, the cold call is a wonderful time to make a favorable first impression. It doesn't take long to start selling yourself. It can be done in seconds. It doesn't take long to start building an emotional connection with somebody. Again, it can take seconds. Well, here's the thing. If Shark Kinney is cold calling me, and based on what he says and how he says it and how he makes me feel, and he's speaking my language and he's laughing, it sounds like he's having the time of his life. He doesn't sound nervous. He sounds genuinely interested in me. My human brain within 10 or 15 seconds is going, I like this guy. I like where this is going. It's like the Chinese restaurant within the food court of the mall. What are they always doing there? They're always giving out samples. Even if I'm full, I'm going to get one. Well, it's just sitting right there, and I take a bite, and oh, that orange chicken hits my lips. Even if I'm full, I got to go, I'll buy one to take home. That's what we're trying to do with this cold call methodology. Just give them a taste of who we are, give them a taste of our why, give them a taste of our differentiation. And it really gets them to be interested, gets them to say, well, I'm not ready to buy from Shark yet, but I'd love to hear more. I'm not ready necessarily yet to move my 401k over to Kinney Financial, but I kind of like this guy. I'm willing to hear him out at least. To get someone to say, well, I'm willing to hear you out, and then here comes somebody else. I haven't talked. Who are you? Who are you? I haven't talked to you yet. I haven't tasted your sample yet. I haven't picked up your intangibles yet. So it can work, and it does work. But to have somebody start the process, work through the process, and close the process, especially once that prospect buys that person, I don't know why you would switch it, because it's a lot easier to sell once that person sells themselves.
Really sort of a pivot on that question as well is, how do you think that sales and marketing, and I talk about this often at a lot of speeches as well, is trying to get them to work together better? And I'm sure you've seen that with a lot of larger companies where they've got a large sales team and a large marketing team. What are you seeing as a hurdle, frustration point for you that you see people are going through regularly?
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody's between marketing and between sales. I mean, it's probably pretty obvious, but both of them really primarily have one goal in common: monetization. What are we marketing for if not to make money? What are we marketing for if not to sign up new customers? What are we marketing for if not to break into new audiences and demographics? The salespeople, it's even more obvious in terms of what they're trying to do. We're doing the same exact thing, yet many of these organizations work in complete silos. You've got the salespeople that are on the ground, that are listening to what's being said, that are having these conversations with prospects, that are trying to meet the need, that aren't communicating that to marketing. You've got marketing that says, well, based on our market research, our analytical data, whatever the case may be, this is what our audience wants. And they're maybe not communicating that with the sales team. And you've got these two disparate departments that are not talking. If you could optimize efficiency, if they could talk to each other, if they could work together, they're going for the same end goal. They're trying to achieve the same result, but they're often doing it in two totally different ways. What's nice about some of the training that we've done in the past over the years is you'll have marketing people actually sit through the cold call training. And why not? Because a good cold call program, a good cold call strategy transcends the phone. We talked about instantaneous differentiation already. Don't you think marketing and branding would like to do that? We talked about how to pique curiosity already. Wouldn't marketing like to do that? We talked about making yourself memorable. Wouldn't marketing like to do that? To sell is to market. It's the yin and the yang. It's symbiotic. And if I'm the leader of any organization, what sales hears, so does marketing, and vice versa.
Well, and to the customer, they don't really care what role you're in. It's got to be geared for their common problem. So I met you through your affiliation with Martin Lindstrom, who's a brilliant marketer. He's been on my show before. Brilliant man. What's it been like working with him and sort of getting to know him? What's it sort of helped teach you about your own profession as well?
Three things come to my mind. Number one, humility.
Yeah.
I have never met a man as humble as Martin Lindstrom. And again, of all the men, or women for that matter, of all the people that have earned the right to be arrogant and cocky,
Yeah.
it's Martin Lindstrom. He is the most humble man. We had one of my associates passed away not too long ago. Very, very tragic, very suddenly, one of our employees. Martin called me on a Saturday to see how I was doing. The heck? Humility. He's taught me humility in the definition of servant leadership. Number two, energy. I think I bring energy for sure, but this guy, my goodness, he's just the Energizer bunny. And I get energy from people that are energetic, and it just osmosis or whatever else. It's almost like, gosh, if it's early in the morning, my cup of coffee hasn't kicked in yet. He's over in Europe, so the time zone difference helps if it's early in the morning here. I need to pick me up. I'm going to call Martin. I need to pick me up. I'm going to talk to Martin. Bam, sure. Just like that.
Yeah.
So the importance of being energetic, the importance of picking other people up based on your energy and your skill set. And I think the last thing that I would say too is kind of what you said, brilliance, but I would say challenging the status quo and conventional wisdom. Nothing Martin does is by the book. Nothing Martin says has anything to do with status quo and conventional wisdom. He loves pushing back. He loves challenging that. And that's one of the things that's taught me is we should go against the grain. We should go against the norm where appropriate. But that's an essence of his brilliance. He sees what we miss. He figures out what everybody before him has failed to do it. And he's able to put it in such simplistic yet eloquent terms. And I'll end on this. That reminds me of the famous Steve Jobs quote, right? Where he says, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. That's Martin Lindstrom with marketing and branding. And I'm a sponge around him. I'm soaking up everything. And it's a real blessing to work with him.
Agreed. So Paul, I asked this of all my guests. You're not going to see very many in the Milwaukee area or anywhere towards the lakes, but what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Oh, a great white shark. It's not, I mean, you probably hear that all the time. It's a great white shark. You and I
not a bad answer.
Yeah. Well, you and I've chatted about this before. That was what drew me to you, was your name of all things. Jaws was my favorite movie of all time. Now I just turned 38 the other day. So Jaws was made in 1975. So I love my dad, but probably showing Jaws to a 6-year-old probably wasn't the greatest example of parenting out there. But ever since I saw Jaws for the first time, I've been enamored with it. I spent my entire life growing up assuming I wanted to be a marine biologist. I actually went to Ripon College to study marine biology. I switched to orthopedic surgery when I heard a talk from an athletic trainer that just blew my mind. But a great white shark by far, because that was Jaws, and that's what started my love affair with biology in particular.
Well, and it's good that you moved in the right direction with your thought, because they're not the mindless, killing machines that Bruce, the mechanical shark, was. But, well, Paul, it's a special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I was born ready, my friend. Bring it on.
All right. Number 1, Zig Ziglar or Dale Carnegie? 2 tremendous salespeople.
Zig Ziglar. And the reason I'd say Zig Ziglar, and again, this is just my subjective opinion, what I see from Zig Ziglar, what I've read, it just seems to be more inspirational, hope, encouragement. The Dale Carnegie stuff, while good, I just find I'm drawn to the Zig Ziglar stuff. That just hits me at a deeper level.
Yeah. And when I've seen him speak in person, he's one of the greatest speakers I've ever seen before he passed away. And he had one of the best lines about shy salespeople have skinny kids, which I've always loved. So number 2, you're in cheesehead country. Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers?
Brett Favre. I love Aaron Rodgers. Maybe it's just because I'm older now and I've got a better awareness of self. I don't know. I just see some stuff from Aaron. Aaron from time to time, a little cocky, a little stuck up from time to time. I don't know. Plus, Brett Favre, I grew up on Brett Favre. I grew up on
Brett's a gunslinger, though. Brett, I mean, yeah.
He was an institution for me. And even today, now he's down at his farm, just in his tank top doing his thing. I'll say Brett Favre.
All right. Number 3, sales movies. Boiler Room or Death of a Salesman?
Boiler Room. Boy, we can keep going. I would say even more than Boiler Room, Tommy Boy.
Thank you. I almost brought that one. Yeah. Tommy Boy's a brilliant movie.
But honestly, I mean, your question, Boiler Room. However, I will say my favorite sales movie of all time is Glengarry Glen Ross.
Yeah, I used that one a lot, so I had to do something different. But no, has one of the greatest 5-minute scenes from Alec Baldwin that you're ever going to see as well. All right, number 4. We talked a little bit about movies and movie trailers. Wonder Woman 1984. Would you rather watch it in the movie theater or watch it at home streamed on HBO Max?
I'd rather do everything in the movie theater. Everything. I mean, again, I don't mind watching Netflix at home. I don't mind the comfort of my couch, but the size of the screen, the experience, plus it's an escape. When I'm watching from home, it's good, but there's my kids. I love them, but yeah. No, give me the experience, the big screen, the surround sound. Let me transport to another world, literally the movie theater every time.
All right, number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
You're right. That is the most important question by far. Biscuits. My wife makes a lot of cornbread. I've just never really taken to it. Give me a biscuit, and even biscuits with gravy. I know I'm up here in southeastern Wisconsin. We don't do a lot of biscuits and gravy, but a good biscuit, but put some gravy on it. You'll find the way to my heart anytime.
Yeah, well, you'd be amazed how many smart people I ask questions that can go on and on and on about a topic. And then when you ask biscuits and cornbread, it throws them off. It really makes them think about something that relates to all of us. So Paul, where can people find out more about you, get a copy of the book, find out more about your sales training and more?
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty straightforward. My website is the central repository for all that stuff. It's my first name, Paul, my middle initial M as in Michael, and then my last name, and it's spelled N as in Nick, E-U-B as in boy, E-R-G-E-R.com. Paul at paulmneuberger.com.
You need to buy NEW Burger and just redirect it just because, for $10 a year. Well, Paul M., thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective.
It was awesome to be here, my friend. You are an outstanding interviewer. I'm sure you get that a lot, but it was a pleasure to talk to you.
So there was my conversation with Paul M. Neuberger, a keynote speaker, entrepreneur, sales trainer, and author of The Secrets to Cold Call Success. Close more business in less time than ever before. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, people buy first from people, and this was such a good episode reminder. For all the other tactics we talk about, all the channels, it's harder to sell yourself by direct mail or email, for example. Even just video isn't always the solution. Connecting through calls is simply more personal when it's done right. And that ain't easy because there are so many freaking bad ones at it. Paul reminds us that people are emotional buyers. And like Maya Angelou said, and I quote, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And if done right, connecting through calling and adding the right value to people who have busy schedules, that time can really create some powerful feelings. Second, so I'm really curious right now to how much of not wanting to be called anymore is generational. Not necessarily a younger generation. Gen X doesn't love being cold called any more than Gen Y does, but some of it can be attributed to habits that have evolved, especially with how we use mobile devices differently, with so many robocalls, bad sales calls, and just unnecessary calls that drive people away. It's like a lot of forms of advertising, but just amped up on the disruption level. But the value, as he said, is that people don't know what they don't know. So there's a way to disrupt, but not by doing sales calls just the wrong way. As Paul said, the war on cold calling is won or lost before you pick up the phone. And I will tell you that I've done this extremely well before, and I've also done it extremely poorly before. Even when I managed a large group, I used to keep a tight grip on the newbies who were cold calling, and ironcladly I made them use a script. But I learned to let go a bit and gave them guardrails, and then just let it go, and they did a much better job to my own learning. So do not as I did, but as I should have done. Third, we get so many calls and sales pitches all day long. I got a ton of these, even when I was recording the episode with him. Most are so vanilla that I can play it out 16 minutes into the future, which is 1 minute past that 15-minute call that so many so desperately wanted. So differentiation is a big key. It's the niche, the why, the what makes consumers want to take a call from you. You have the ability to differentiate yourself really heavily with the spoken word. So what's the secret? Is now the greatest time in the world to cold call? Well, that phone may still look like Thor's hammer to many of you, but it's time to create some revenue. So be smart, grab the book, and let's go. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. And if you want to call me to sell me something, I'm just warning you, that you've got to join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.